This chalice does shine on our shared past, a past that has been recorded by the people with the most power, the victors in conflicts. Even when our Unitarian Universalist forebears have been labeled as heretics, as religious outlaws, they still lived with all of the privileges of white supremacy. This month is Black History Month, and while it's important to share and celebrate the often quiet and unrecognized victories and accomplishments of Black people, like Claudette Colvin, who inspired a movement of bus boycotts, lunch counter sit-ins, and nonviolence resistance, it's also important to pay attention to the ways in which we who live as white-skinned people in the world have benefited, even as Claudette Colvin, Frederick Douglass, and Sojourner Truth, and millions of others have suffered. It's time to pay attention to our own privilege and to respond accordingly, to manifest the love we claim as our motivating spirit, to pay attention to our own privilege while atoning for oppression of the past and present, living out our covenant. Let's all rise now and recite together the covenant of this congregation, words that guide our lives together and individually.
Hello, everyone. Sorry, I'm so short. I have to. My license, it says I'm. Oh no, Rev, no, it's okay. I can move a microphone, I swear. Oh, this.
I know it's a little thing, but if it goes down
right
a
there?
bit, then they can see you at home.
Can everyone see me on the Zoom? Yeah! Hi, Zoom friends. Good, good. Okay. Sorry. Well, first, hi, friends.
Hello.
Good morning. Hi. As I stand before you today, I'm going to talk to you about my own stewardship and my relationship with my investment in our amazing community and my journey with it. So, as I stand before you today, reflecting on my own journey of stewardship and giving, I can't help but feel a surge of gratitude for the opportunity to share my story with you all. It's a story that begins with a simple desire to be a part of something greater, to make a difference, and to find my place within this incredible community. You see, not too long ago, I was a pretty newcomer to UUCSC. Was brand new last year, sitting in the seats you are today. Fresh-faced and eager, I stepped through those doors with a heart full of hope and a longing to connect, both in person and via Zoom. I remember day one when I came in, I tried to help with our Zoom issues we were experiencing. I wanted more than just a Sunday service. I craved community, purpose, and belonging, and some singing too, so thank you, Mike, for taking me on. When the call for donations to support our beloved congregation echoed through the halls, I didn't hesitate, even though last year at this time I was still super new here. Despite being a new member, despite still finding my footing, I knew deep down that I wanted to be a part of this journey from the very beginning. I wanted to contribute, to invest, and to commit myself wholeheartedly to the mission of UUCSC, being welcoming, loving, growing spiritually, and seeking justice. For me, giving wasn't just about fulfilling an obligation. It was a tangible expression of my desire to get involved, to play an active role in shaping the future of our community. It was a way of saying, hey, count on me. I'm here and I'm ready to do my part, even with the little I make as a graduate student. But my decision to donate wasn't solely driven on the sense of duty. It was fueled by something far more powerful: hope. Hope for a brighter future, hope for a positive change, and hope for a place where love, compassion, and justice reign supreme. Pieces UUCSC continues its commitment to today. As I reflect on that pivotal moment when I became one of the first to donate for UUCSC, even though I was so new, I'm reminded of the power of our community. Each one of us brings something really unique to the table, something that enriches and strengthens the fabric of our congregation, including awesome ringtones. And that's amazing stuff. And so, my awesome friends and folks, I stand before you today not as a lone voice, but as a member of a vibrant, diverse, and compassionate community. A community that values generosity, empathy, and solidarity. A community that believes in transformative power and power to love, both within these halls and beyond. So let us remember that each contribution, no matter how big or small, makes a huge difference. Let us embrace the spirit of giving, not out of obligation, but out of love for our community and for future generations yet to come to UUCSC. I invite you to join me in this journey of stewardship, those willing and able. Let us give generously, serve passionately, and love fiercely. Together, we can continue to create a community where all are welcomed, all are valued, and all are loved. Thank you for your time. Thanks.
Last week I had to go to the audiologist and have my hearing aids, like the little piecey parts, fixed on them. There's something I noticed immediately about the words of Adrienne Marie Brown that Linda read. It's titled, "What a Time to Be Alive," which feels positive to me. It feels like it's really reaching for the sky. It's not called, "What a Time to Be Paralyzed by Liberal White Guilt." It's not called, "What a Time to Off Yourself." Her words are an encouragement to consider the privilege we have, those of us who live out in the world with white skin and white identities, to consider the privileges we have largely because of the colonization of this land and the terror of enslavement that built the wealth and the power of this nation. For those of us who are white or white adjacent, things may not feel quite as overwhelming as they were in the months immediately following the murder of George Floyd. But nonetheless, this is still a time to dive into the river of change rather than be deluged or drowned by it. Unlike Adrienne Marie Brown, I am white. I am all white. In fact, 23andMe informed me a few years ago that my DNA is 100% European. Not 99.8, but 100% European. And even though that DNA is 4% Neanderthal, which is the highest amount possible for a human being in the 21st century, I am as white as they come. Like Adrienne Marie Brown, I am profoundly affected by the legacy and the ongoing practice of white supremacy in ways I didn't ask for, in ways I must navigate every day of my life. Because of the color of my skin, my life has been undeniably easy in many ways. My parents immigrated to the United States just before I was born. They struggled, certainly. The stress was so great that my mother miscarried the fetus she was carrying at the time that she crossed the border. But when I was born a year later, I was an anchor baby. And we were followed by most of the rest of my mother's family, her parents and 4 of her 7 siblings. They were the beginning of what now gets called chain migration, a bugaboo of political conservatives. And I guarantee you that never would have happened if our skin were black or brown, or if they had come from a nation south of our border. Because they were coming from a place without a history of slavery, a place where everyone was white, they didn't have quite the same baggage many from the United States have, but immediately they knew what they were getting into. After all, it was 1966, a time of tumult as great as this time. We lived in Hartford, Connecticut, in a dense urban neighborhood called Frog Hollow. And I want to point out that it was named after the people that inhabit it, not the amphibians in the park. And they wanted out. They wanted to raise their children in a little single-family house on a little patch of lawn, not in the French-Canadian ghetto. They were able to buy that house at age 23, in part because they worked multiple jobs and my mother took on boarders, but also because they were white. In those days, suburbs were developing rapidly, funded by the federal government, which required, yes, actually required, redlining. Black and brown people were excluded from those towns and were in fact shut out of virtually every suburban development in this country. My parents were able to use the equity they built in that little house to start a business, build a bigger house, and then expand that business. Equity in their house made them financially stable. Equity. It's a funny word, isn't it? It comes from the Latin equus, meaning fair. It's been translated to mean equal, but equality and equity are not actually the same thing. Equality assumes that everyone is the same and deserves an equal share. But equity is an acknowledgement that not everything is equal. Even if you only own 10% of your house and the bank owns the rest, you are responsible for the maintenance, right? So if the roof leaks, the bank isn't going to come out and fix it. So whatever value it gains because of the market and your care is yours, right? That equity doesn't belong to the bank, it's yours, because that's fair. And that's why it's called equity. So my parents were able to use the equity in their home to send me to a world-class college from which I graduated debt-free. That college, Rhode Island School of Design, was the most racially diverse environment I'd ever seen at that point in my life. But the sad truth is that there were very, very few BIPOC folks from the United States enrolled there at that time. About 1/4 of the student body was BIPOC, but they were overwhelmingly from Asia, Africa, the Pacific Islands, and South America. Brown and especially black folks had been shut out from the American financial system for so long that the vast majority in this country just didn't have the economic advantages of accumulated generational wealth that would have afforded such high tuition. I got a lot of my parents' opportunities. And I even had those opportunities when I bought my first home. And this was, 15 years after redlining ended. And I deserved those opportunities no more than anyone else, but I got them. I don't feel guilty about it really, because I feel like guilt is much more crippling than it is empowering. I just try to be very, very aware of my privilege so that I don't abuse the power I have because of it. Like Adrienne Marie Brown, I am just trying to do my own work, though admittedly in very different ways. I've had to make an uneasy peace with the unearned advantages I have simply because of the color of my skin. For this morning's service, I gave Linda the option of sharing her own personal reflection on the reading, but I'm kind of glad that she chose not to. Because honestly, that would have felt to me like I was asking her, maybe even expecting her to do my work for me. Like I was saying, okay, teach me about racism. Tell me what to do so I can just sit and listen. Hard as it is, humbling as it is, I want to do the work. I want to look people in the eye and say, I am sorry for the impact on you of my white supremacy. More importantly, I want to continue to do my best to act in such a way that I won't have to apologize in that same way over and over and over again. I'm proud to say that our Unitarian Universalist Association has also been reckoning with its white supremacy, both in the past, especially among our Unitarian forebears, and in the present. The UUA has made a commitment to redistributing resources, not as charity or a simplistic apology, but to right the wrongs of the past and prevent them from continuing on into the future. This is an era for the UUA to course correct, to oversteer through the waters of this fast-moving river that we're navigating. It's an era of redistributing money and leadership positions and power and even time in meetings. Leadership of our Association of Congregations is now mostly female and largely BIPOC and queer. After generations of cisgender, heterosexual white men having virtually all of the power, they now have very little. Their experience is no longer the default assumption. I hope you remember Reverend Derek Jackson, who preached here back in November. He is a Black queer man, and at the time that he preached here, he was the co-director of the Unitarian Universalist Ministers Association. A couple weeks ago, he was hired as the credentialing director of the Unitarian Universalist Association. So he's part of the machine that determines who is worthy of achieving and maintaining ministerial credentialing. He is arguably the most powerful hired position in our association, a position that had previously been held only by straight white men. And it wasn't an accident that he was hired. It was part of a plan to redistribute power, leadership, and money. The UUA's plan also includes changing the way we describe our values, our principles, and our bylaws and our statements to the wider world. By now, if you've been around a while, you've heard that we're in the process of replacing our old 7 or 8 principles with something new as Article 2 of our bylaws. The words independence, equity, transformation, pluralism, generosity, and justice, with love in the center. In this proposal, which we'll be voting on in late June, each word is defined. So this morning I want to focus on the statement about equity. The Article 2 proposal says, we declare that every person has the right to flourish with inherent dignity and worthiness. We covenant to use our time, wisdom, attention, and money to build and sustain fully accessible and inclusive communities. That statement, along with the entirety of the proposal for Article 2 and all of the practices of the UUA, operate with the understanding that while we may all have inherent dignity and we all may be worthy of flourishing, we all start from very different places. We don't all have equal opportunities. Some have all the advantages of being in every majority category imaginable, and some have few or none of those advantages. Equity evens out the starting point and even overcorrects to make up for a long history of inequity. If you want to know what it looks like to hold the contradictions of white supremacy accountable, the way Adrienne Marie Brown asks us to, this is it. It's not easy, but the work is to focus on equity, not equality. Our closing hymn is called There's a River Flowing in My Soul. It was written by Rose Sanders, a 79-year-old civil rights attorney, education activist, songwriter, and playwright living in Selma, Alabama. It's number 1007 in your hymnal, the teal hymnal. Please rise.